Welcome, Spalding Gray.
Thanks.
Welcome home in a certain way.
Well, yes.
Before we get into Spalding Gray, I'm thinking this is also the last night of Johnny Carson on television.
Right.
You owe a little something, the man at the desk, to the Carson imagery, don't you? Even the whole idea of a monologue?
Geez, I never even thought about it. My work at the desk grew out of being with the Wooster Group at a very long table, and I shrunk it down. But come to think of it, maybe that's why I was never on the Johnny Carson Show. You know, I was screened for the Johnny Carson Show, and it was some years back, and they had me run all of my monologue material. And I started telling this story to one of his representatives about, from my monologue, Booze, Cars, and College Girls, about how when I was at Emerson College here in Boston, I was the lead in Molière's Misanthrope at college. And I had a very sensuous girlfriend, my first very sensuous girlfriend. We used to make love in front of the fireplace, but I was too cheap to buy firewood, couldn't afford it because we were buying champagne. So I had them knock down the Molière set and bring it over and pile it in the apartment on Beacon Street, on 130 Beacon Street. I think it was 130. And we made love in front of the burning Misanthrope set. And that was a story that I told to Johnny's representative. He was saying, tell us stories. He said, well, I like that very much. I like that very much. But do not say words like Molière or Misanthrope on television. Basically, Johnny hates theater, and you're going to be playing, basically, for a bunch of stupid people that want to get to sleep. So that was the take on the Johnny Carson Show. And I never got on as a result of being too erudite, I guess, too Bostonian.
That's a complicated bit of business you do. How do you describe what you're doing? And to make it just a little more complicated, you do movies about your monologues. You've written a book of monologues about, which is also becoming a movie, about the process of writing a novel. Where's the center of this thing? What's it all about?
The center will not hold. I can only quote Yeats on that one. There are 3 audio tapes coming out now from Gang of 7, Windham Hill, the monologues. There's the film of Monster in the Box, which opens here in June. There's the book of the monologue, and then there's the book that the monologue is about called Impossible Vacation. So it's a hall of mirrors right now. And I have never worked in a more complicated way than I am now as far as representing aspects of myself. And I think that I've brought it to probably its most complicated place in terms of product or in terms of the way that the media is representing myself. And I'm ready to pull back and get real simple. I simply don't know what I'm going to do next.
Explain how the whole monologue form suggested itself.
Yeah. I co-founded an experimental theater company called the Wooster Group in New York City in 1977. And we did a very powerful piece, a very strong piece together about called Rumstick Road, about kind of exploring my mother's suicide. She committed suicide when I was 26 in 1967. And I went back and interviewed my grandmother and my father and her therapist and did family slides. It was a kind of a docudrama. I mean, it was a mixed media kind of thing. And within that, I walked forward and directly addressed the audience and said, I'm Spalding Gray, and this is my life. This happened to me. So I did not take on the persona as an actor then. I'd been acting up until then, and I dropped that and said, here it is. It's Robert Lowell, taking it from Robert Lowell, who I'm very influenced by as a New England poet. Robert Lowell once said, why not tell what really happened? And for me, Robert Lowell is the great autobiographic poet, and I kind of followed in the footsteps of that and became the autobiographic talker. And it's after I did that, then I developed 13 monologues that grew out of that original demasking and saying, here I am, this is who I am, and this is what happened to me living in this world.
And then how did you edit them and memorize them or turn them into...
Never memorized. I had keywords. The first monologue I ever did was called Sex and Death to the Age 14. And it was simply all the memories I had, which are very minimal. I mean, very, not heavy experiences at all. But I just would write out a little outline, a guide. And I spoke it openly, the way I'm talking to you, and tape recorded it, and then I'd have new memories. And in other words, what I'm doing is speaking memory. I'm speaking the film that I see in my head of that memory, but I'm not writing it down. The monologues are only written down afterwards, they're transcribed afterwards. The book is a different topic, that was written.
But it was also written into a tape recorder at first.
No. It was written longhand, then read into a tape recorder, and then transcribed. but never spoke. That was really a written. That's much more a literary piece, the novel.
I want to celebrate the provincial victory here. There are a lot of provincial notes about a Providence guy.
Right.
You say, I secretly longed to find passionate meaning in my own life, but I couldn't imagine what it would be. I had only the sad, soft, ancient legacy of the bog people, the old inheritance of the soft, pulpy Irish in me, telling stories while drinking beer. And then two pages later...
That sounds nice. I like it when someone reads it to me. It
Sounds
sounds like writing.
You also spoke of doing a play, a Robert Lowell play, in which he was
That's right.
directing. And you remember that in our first rehearsal, we all sat and listened to Robert Lowell read the play all the way through. He read in one long, monotonous drone. Every character seemed to be speaking in the same depressive New England tones.
Right.
He mumbled it through in a resigned way with very little passion. I felt right at home. The play was all about my people, my repressive Puritan people. I'm just struck all the way through here that this is a very New England accented voice and a very New England kind of story, rather Cheever-esque.
Yes.
There's something of
Well, thank you for that, the Cheever thing, because I do relate to that.
What is that connection? Among others, there's alcohol,
Right.
there's fear of
Right.
death especially. There's
Right.
also a certain, shall we say, downwardly mobile Yankee
Right.
consciousness.
Right. I hope it doesn't take me down in the same way it did Cheever. Well, the Cheever thing is in there, but most of all, the thing is that it is a New England book, and I hadn't realized it till I came here to Boston to be here with you, to visit, to be doing the reading at the public library, and I hadn't realized how topical it is and how tied in to that whole history of me growing up in Rhode Island, me going to school in Boston, me going to school in Maine. The Cheever thing is distant in the sense that I didn't try to imitate him, although recently I was working with Paul Mazursky in his new film, The Pickle. Believe it or not, it's called The Pickle. It'll be out in the fall. And he is a very good director, and he had an epiphany. He said, you must be John Cheever. You have to be the John Cheever story. And I said, oh yes, you direct it, Paul, and we'll raise the money based on a bisexual, depressed, alcoholic writer who's living on the Hudson River, and we'll sell that to America in these depressed times. That's going to be a hit. So we'll let that one go. I'd rather be Spalding Gray than play John Cheever.
There are other sort of provincial aspects of this, and I've forgotten just what they were.
Oh well, you have to. Anyone can read the book and read it. They'll feel right at home or not at home when they read it. It's certainly applicable and perfect for this audience.
I know what I was trying to think of, and that is a kind of New England self-improving, almost didactic energy in this book. It seems to me the kernel of it, and I may be all wrong, is an idea that we should all be learning how to tell our stories, to discover the stories in ourselves and learn a way to connect with them.
Well, I don't think the kernel of the book is that, but I certainly think the kernel of my approach to storytelling is that when I teach it in the public forum or when I do workshops. And I really think that everyone, of course, has a story that can be brought out. And it is so important and so wonderful to have it as a form of entertainment other than the television, other than a book, but just in sharing what happened over the day, in the most informal situation, over a dinner. Or
How do you teach it?
Well, I'm doing a workshop at Esalen Institute at Big Sur in June 7th. And I don't teach it, I conduit it. I say, like, I have 15 people, and everyone is asked to come in with a half-hour story from their life. And then I have the rest of the people act as audience. And the first thing I do after someone tells a story is turn to the audience immediately and say, the other people in the workshop, how did it hold together for you? How did it work? Where was it interesting? Where was it? And then I begin to talk about that. But all I do is make conscious, to say consciously, is it a good story? Not just is it bearing, exposing personal information. Is it, how is it different from exhibitionism? How is it different from therapy? And what that is crafting. Now, I've had people in workshops that are dying of AIDS. Or I remember a woman that just to help kill someone in a euthanasia situation. And these are very, very, could fall into the thing of therapy. They're very powerful stories. And when I hear those, I pull back immediately, and the first thing I'll say to the class is, what did you find interesting? Where were you bored? And go right into structure, and use that, approach it as a story first, you know. And then therapy is not my place.
Well, I was going to ask you, how is it different from therapy? Even how is your own work different from a kind of analytical?
It is therapeutic at first, and then when it starts to get shaped, it becomes more musical and takes on a form. So that it's the way that I'm talking with you now is the way that I first thought a monologue. I don't know what my answer to you is about this, and we're kind of feeling it out, and I'm just talking with you. I don't have any rote routine. So in a way, it's therapeutic, because when I'm private, it's being witnessed. But the more I would meet with you, and the more I would talk with you as an audience, the more I would begin to find a rhythm and shape to my words that would become more like art and storytelling. And within that would be built a certain therapeutic aspect, because it would be sharing and putting together one's life and trying to understand it through storytelling. But I think that it's very different from therapy, in the sense that it's not private, secret, one-on-one, analytic, but becomes much more an art form, more musical, you know. I don't think therapy finally, you know, I don't think the therapist pats you on the back because you told a good story. Mine do, and that's a problem, and that's why I have to keep shifting therapists. I seduce them into my stories.
In the business, in your description of telling a story, reading it, and then editing it, and specifically listening to how writing sounds,
Right.
I was reminded of all people of Walter Lippmann, who used to dictate his columns into a machine and then listen to them and then rewrite them before he sent them off to the Herald.
That's
the Herald
interesting. I
Tribune.
didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's very similar form. Right.
Do you recommend, as I've heard you describe it, I thought that's a whole new approach to writing.
Yeah, well, when I taught, I did teach at Columbia for a while, Columbia University, writing, and storytelling as writing. And what I would do is have them say, well, all right, most young writers are looking for a voice, and they do it through imitating other writers to find their voice. In fact, I almost did that. When I was first asked to do my monologues in print, I thought Random House meant I had to write them out rather than transcribe them. And I'd been reading Raymond Carver at the time. And everything I wrote out seemed like Raymond Carver. So I thought, well, no. My voice is what my speaking. So I will transcribe what I'm saying. So when I work with a student now, I ask them to speak the story first, tape record it, then transcribe it, and then begin to rework it. Because in that, you find your actual voice. I mean, the voice that's coming from the voice box, not just from the head. So one can find their voice through a computer or a typewriter, but I don't think that's a printed voice. And my idea is to come into it more organically. The actual voice, transcribed, printed, then reworked. And so you have that dialectic between what the actual physical voice is connected with the printed.
Thursday night at the Boston Public Library, you had an enormous crowd.
Yes.
For a public reading. I have to say I was surprised that many young, hip, extremely appreciative people would come out on a Thursday night. And they all had a magnificent time. But I'm also wondering sort of why, besides the fact that you do it extremely well, why is this form flourishing so right now?
It's, you ask that question and I make up an answer because I'm as lost as you are. I mean, I would ask you that question. And the first thing that comes to mind is that we're over-mediated and that people are looking for a small, honest voice, something that is working from, I mean, I often say God is in the details. And I think that the personal is the political, all of those cliches that I say often. But when someone is speaking from a kind of struggle, a personal struggle or personal truth, and people can relate to that because it's so, I mean, look at what's going on in politics. Everything seems to be manufactured language, virtual reality. And I think it's a reaction against media and virtual reality. And I had I wanted to protest this on television. The Gap approached me to do an ad for TV. They said I could do anything for 30 seconds. At first I said no. Then they said William Styron is going to do something on censorship. So I said, William Styron's going to do something? They're paying me scales, no money. I said, what would I do for 30 seconds for the Gap? And I wanted to do something that was really protesting MTV, the way that they cut up and break our concentration. So I said, I will sit on camera with a Gap t-shirt. You had to wear a Gap t-shirt. With my desk, my glass of water for 28 seconds. And then I will say, take your time. They said, we'll get back to you, babe. We'll get back to you. We'll get back to you, babe. Never heard from them again. Never heard from them again.
You mentioned censorship, which reminds me that you have acknowledged federal arts grants that helped get you to where you are today. Mm-hmm. What do you think nowadays, as you see significant artists turning back federal subsidies for fear of censorship?
Yeah.
Well, I think protest against
I think
censorship.
they should turn it back in order to get pure. And this is easy for me to say now that I'm making a living as a writer, but I think that the best thing that could happen to the arts in America is that all funding could be withdrawn for 5 years. Granted, it should come back. It should be there eventually. But until we take Star Wars, $90 billion in the next 15 years, break that down, which is I see as the American psychosis, spending money on that kind of thing, spread it out to health and welfare. The arts should be at the bottom of the list. Why? Because they've been over-subsidized in my mind, and they'll start to come up like the most beautiful kind of weeds in the midst of all of that. Because Daddy has been paying too much sugar money to artists lately, and real art only thrives when the need is there to do art. You know? It will be a whole new kind of art. It will be a protest art, an art that says, it'll be speaking more directly to the issue. It'll be more like a Robert Lowell poem versus a Wallace Stevens poem. Love them both, but we're not in need of Wallace Stevens poems right now. We need a little bit more of contacting between the fact of what's going on in this economy and imagination to bring the two together.
I heard John Updike the other day say very much what you're saying, that comic strip artists don't get subsidized, writers shouldn't be subsidized,
right.
And that among other things we've created a whole class of arts beggars that aren't really at the center of the enterprise.
Right, right, yeah.
You also touch on spending priorities, which opens another important box, which is the politics of your work. Mm-hmm. Nominally, all of your work is about yourself, mm-hmm. and yet somewhere trying to get out of there are all sorts of political statements and mm-hmm. public messages. Can you talk about those a little bit?
I think the thing that I struggle with the most is what's going on. James Hillman has just written a book, wonderful. I've sent it a copy to blurb it. It was it's dialogues with Robert Ventura from the LA Weekly, and it's called "After 100 Years of Psychoanalysis, Why Is the World Getting Worse?" And within that book, he talks a lot about how the me generation thing and the thing that I fall into too, about how people have gotten so obsessed with themselves as individuals in America because they're so disillusioned with politics that they no longer see a gestalt between themselves and the community, themselves in an overview of politics in America, because God, look what we're dealing with, and they begin to take everything as their fault. They bring it all on themselves. They're responsible for their success or they're responsible for their failure. And there is no, I mean, we could learn more from Russia in the sense of we could become more socialistic in the sense of seeing how the individual fits into the body politic. And if anything's gone awry in America now, it's that. It's a certain kind of, Richard Sennett writes about it too, about the person always needing to see themselves in the landscape and not seeing the larger picture of the landscape coming back at them or the political issues coming back at them. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that when we look at our politicians, we don't see anyone. You know, we don't see anyone. No one's home. I just had dinner with Mayor Lindsay last night, ex-Mayor Lindsay of New York, wonderful man who's just writing a book on George Bush, and he looked at me with these great sad eyes and says, "There's no leadership left. This time round, last time round, what do you tell young people about leadership?"
Can you imagine yourself writing more political, more public novel or art than you've done in the past?
Yes, I can. I don't know how to do it.
Where would it begin?
I would try to find the front door of the Pentagon. I would go down, I would get a haircut, I would put on my Palm Beach suit, and I would try to find the front door of the Pentagon, and I would go in and say, I am proud to be an American. I have spent enormous amounts of money on taxes. Here's the pie. Here's what you guys are spending on Star Wars or defenses, $90 billion over the next 15 years. Is there anyone I could please speak to about this? Is there anyone I could please speak to about this? And see where it goes. We'll go out on the sidewalk, I'm sure, but it's worth a try.
Good luck. I have to say I enjoyed Impossible Vacation very much.
Good.
I'm still not quite sure whether this is the story of an actor or of a writer or just a man getting better in America in the 80s and 90s, but I loved it.
All of them, all of the below.
Thank you. We have many happy memories of you at the Brattle Theater and in
great,
Boston,
yes.
and it's a pleasure to have you back. Thank you, Spalding
Thank you.
Gray.
Thanks.
I'm Christopher Lydon. Good night.